Radha Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam. All goes to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you so much for joining, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Dinabandhu Guru Das and Lalita Devi Dasi from Sandy Ridge. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dinabandhu Prabhuji and Lalita Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you so much for joining.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Pranita from Ashburn, Virginia.
Hare Krishna, Pranita Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you so much for joining, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Pavitra Madhavi Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Vinita Gandharvika Devidasi from Texas. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vanita Gandharvika Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you so much for joining, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Sita Priti Devidasi.
Hare Krishna, Sita Priti Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you so much for joining, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Pavitra Madhavi Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Shama Gauri Dasi from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Shama Gauri Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you so much for joining, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Pavitra Madhavi Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Vrinda from Baltimore.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you so much for joining, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to Assembly of Day. This is Mohini Lakshmi from Detroit.
Hare Krishna, Mohini Lakshmi Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you so much for joining, Mataji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji, I think that's enough of introduction.
Okay, Mataji, then thank you everyone for joining. So now I would request Vrinda Mataji to please sing Jaya Radha Madha. So Mataji, please take over the call. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Mataji. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava
Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. So, Chaya Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. Can I read, Mataji?
Yeah.
Okay, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Mataji, do we have to start the recording? I think we should start the recording because.
Okay.
Haribo.
Welcome to Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call. Today we are very fortunate to have His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj to enlighten us on Srimad Bhagavatam. So Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. So thank you so much Guru Maharaj for giving a valuable association and time. So now I would like to hand over the call to you Maharaj. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Haribo, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tiname. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Sakarine. Panchakalpa Tarupascha Kripa Sindhupe Vachapatitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Have you read the verse yet?
Not yet, Maharaj.
Not yet Maharaj.
Oh, okay, so I'll read the verse. This is from Canto 4, Chapter 29, talks between Narada and King Prachinabarhi. Verses 18 through 20. Teharatas tvanendrayasva sambatsara rayo gatihi div karma chakratri gunam vajapan chaksu bandhurura manorasmir purim suto rin nido dvandva kumbaraha pranchandriyartha preksepaha saptadatu Varun Takaha Akutir Vikramo Bayo Mriga Tishnam Padavati Ekadasandriya Chamu Panchasuna Vinodakrit. It's a long translation with 3 verses. Narada Muni is responding to King Prachinabarhishat's bewilderment when he expressed that bewilderment, saying, whatever you've said so far, I don't understand. So now Narada Muni is giving further explanations in the form of explaining the analogy that he used in the previous chapter. What I referred to as the chariot was in actuality the body. The senses are the horses that pull the chariot. As time passes year after year, these horses run without obstruction, but in fact, they make no progress. Pious and impious activities are the 2 wheels of the chariot. The 3 modes of material nature are the chariot flags. The 5 types of life air constitute the living entity's bondage. The mind is considered to be the rope. Intelligence is the chariot driver. The heart is the sitting place in the chariot, and the dualities of life, such as pleasure and pain, are the knots. The 7 elements are the coverings of the chariot. and the working senses of the 5 external processes. The 11 senses, or the soldiers, being engrossed in sense enjoyment, the living entity seated on the chariot, hankers after fulfillment of his false desires and runs after sense enjoyment, life after life. So here, of course, the purport is also quite lengthy, but we'll go through it. The entanglement of the living entity in sense enjoyment is very nicely explained in these verses. The word samvatsara, meaning the progress of time, is significant. Day after day, week after week, fortnight after fortnight, month after month, year after year, the living entity becomes entangled in the chariot's progress. Now, you have to remember the chariot is the body. The chariot rests on the 2 wheels, which are pious and impious activities. The living entity attains a certain position in life in a particular type of body according to his pious and impious activities. But his transmigration in different bodies should not be taken as progress. So whatever situation we are in now, it's due to our cumulative activities in previous lives, which fall into the category of pious or impious. But real progress, so going from body to body is explaining, it's not really progress. Progress is now described here, Twabtva Deham Purna Janma 90. One makes real progress when he does not have to take on a material body. So that's also explained. Aita Brahmana Bari Ananta Jivagana Chaturasa Laksa Yonite Karana Brahmana. The living entity is wandering throughout the entire universe and taking birth in different species on different planets. So that verse is also in the Bhagavad Gita. Karanam Guna Sango So Sadasa Joni Janmasu. From the highest planet to the lowest planet, people are taking birth in different species of life, sometimes in a good situation materially, sometimes not so good like that. The living entity is wandering throughout the universe, thus he moves up and down, but that is not real progress. Real progress is getting out of the material world. Even if one is promoted to the highest planet, Brahmaloka, in the universe, one has to again fall down to the lower planetary systems. Thus, wandering up and down, perpetually under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature. Being in illusion, one is thinking, I am making progress. So if someone thinks I'm improving my material situation or I'm making progress, here it's explained, no, this is not progress. Simply changing or improving material situation. Real progress is to get out of the entanglement of material life. A person is like an airplane encircling the earth day and night and capable of leaving the earth's gravitational field. Actually, there is no progress because the airplane is conditioned or caught up in the earth's gravitational pull. Just as a king is sitting on a chariot, the living entity is sitting on the body. So we are sitting on the body, we are not the body. The sitting place is the heart, and the living entity sits there and engages in the struggle for existence. And this goes on perpetually. So a point to be made here is that the soul sits on the heart. So the heart, sometimes it says, is the seat of emotions. So because the soul is sitting there, it's in the region of the heart, not in the heart, but on the heart. There's a difference. The heart is simply a machine which pumps blood, regulates the flow of blood through the body. But what gives the element of consciousness and emotion is coming from that part of the body, which means or which indicates that the soul is present on the heart or within the region of the heart. Narottam Das Thakur explained that the living entity is struggling very hard due to the influence of fruital activities and mental speculations and simply getting different types of body. In Bengali, say mitche mayaravase, kachu beshe, kachu bububai, jeev Krishna das, vishwas, polidara dukanai. So what does that mean? That life after life, the living entity is going up and down in material energy, just as the waves are tossing the straws in the ocean from one situation to another. Sometimes these straws come together as family members, and then another wave comes apart and takes away that connection, and then we move on to another situation, forgetting about our previous situation. We don't know who we were in the last life, who was our friends, who was our relatives, who was our father, who was our mother, what country we're in, what planet we were in. All that was important in our last life, but now it's all gone. So here we are in our present situation, and we have the same arrangement, but all with different identities. Now here it says, it goes, if one really wants to make progress in life, one has to give up fruitive activities and mental speculation. So what does that mean? Fruitive activities means to engage in activities to get a desired result for one's personal enjoyment or one's extended enjoyment, which means to do it for family members or friends, or to do it in such a way that I will receive happiness and satisfaction in the future. So fruitive activities means one gets something immediately. In other words, if you do something and you get some reciprocation immediately, then that is considered to be one type of fruitive activity. The other one is that it doesn't come immediately, it comes in the future. Just like you go to work and you're investing your time and energy in performing certain kind of labor, but the remuneration comes at a certain planned schedule. In other words, you get paid at a certain day. So you don't get paid exactly every day. So that would be fruitive activities in the future, like that. So these are two types of fruitive activities, or two ways that fruitive activities are understood, like that. And then here, analogy is given. Living entities like a deer that goes to the desert in search of water. In the desert, an animal simply searches in vain for water. There's no water in the desert. And the animal sacrifices his life sometimes trying to find water. Everyone is planning for the future, thinking, if I get this, or if I can have this, or I can be this, or I can do this, or in other words, there's big plans for the future. But here it says that, and of course, why are these plans? In order to be happy. However, when one comes to the point, he sees that all his plans never end in happiness. He simply goes further and further in the same point without achieving any results. Therefore, he wastes his life simply struggling for things that are ephemeral or not obtainable. But this is material life. So this verse or the purport is also nicely describing the futility, or what is actually success in life. It's not about improving one's material situation. It's about getting out of the material situation. If you're in jail and you are thinking, well, here I am in jail and my situation's not so good, why don't I get a better place in the jail? I'll get a bigger cell. Maybe I'll do something that will be noteworthy, and I'll get a little privileges in the jail. We have that experience that there are actually different types of prisoners found within jail cells, or what we say penal institutions. And what are those different prisoners? You have three kinds. You have those who are in solitary confinement. They're locked in a very small cell with nothing in the cell, nothing, just one toilet bowl. That's all is in there. And an iron bed with no sheets, no mattresses, nothing. And it's just big enough where you can get up and move around a little bit, but that's all. That's called solitary confinement. It's a type of punishment within the jail. And then there's the mainstream prisoners who are, they're there and they're going along following the prison rules. But then there's others who've been in the prison for a while, and they have somehow earned some good behavior, and they get some privileges. They can use the library. They may also have keys to unlock certain doors, to move other inmates, prisoners from one place to another. So we can see even within the jail, there are different levels of living conditions, and with privileges attached or not attached. So in the same way, we can compare this to the three modes of material nature: ignorance, passion, and goodness. In the same way, the living entity is trying to raise themselves up to a better situation, to enjoy more happiness in the material world. It's like trying to go from a one jail situation to a better jail situation. Better to get out of the prison. That's actually the solution. So while one's in the prison, one should make plans to get out of the prison and try to execute those plans. But at the same time, when one is in the prison, one should think, now why waste my time trying to improve my situation here when all it is more and more entanglement in what we say the four pillars of miserable conditions: birth, death, disease, and old age. So these four things are built in to those who have a material body. Those take birth. Birth is not what we say, an easy thing. Perhaps you have read that section in the fourth canto in the previous chapters where the living entity is locked within the womb of a mother for 9 months, undergoing much difficulty. It's a very difficult situation for a living entity to be in the womb. We were all in that situation, but somehow we forgot. And that forgetfulness is good, because if we were to remember, we would not be able to, what we say, able to function on the normal. It was such a difficult situation. It's both there for the mother and for the child. The mother, she's enduring it because there's love there for the child. But the child is simply in a very, very unnatural situation, or the living entity is in that situation. So birth is considered to be one of the four miseries of material energy. Death, we all know, death just destroys all your plans and takes everything away. Old age, things don't work so good anymore. The body's breaking down, hearing is not as good, seeing is becoming less, even walking becomes difficult. So many internal problems come, and sometimes people have problem after problem with medical needs. So this is old age. Old age means more and more debilitation upon the body, which just weighs one's mind down to struggle. And of course, disease, we all know that. We're in the midst of a pandemic now. People are dying wholesale every day by a disease. Nobody knows too much about the disease. All they know that people are dying from it. And that's just one of the many diseases. No one can get rid of disease. You get rid of one disease, another one comes. You get rid of that one, two more come. The doctors sometimes think, well, we're going to find, the cure to all diseases. Not possible. They've never done it in the past. They can't do it in the present, and they won't do it in the future. It's just the way this world works. Disease is always there. And so people are spending, the biggest industry in the world is the pharmaceutical industry. More money is spent in medicines, medical care, and all kinds of things related to medical care. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. So people are always getting sick. It's just the way it is. Disease is there. So these things are built into life. So the idea is not to simply try to get into a situation to avoid these things. We can't avoid it. Here, it uses the example of a deer running after a mirage in the desert. The Sanskrit terminology is called Mirga Trishna. It's an illusion of happiness, that's all. Instead of thinking how to improve my material situation, better to think about how I can improve my consciousness so I can come to the point of Krishna consciousness. It's not about changing situations or trying to find a better situation. Wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever the situation is, become Krishna conscious. And that way you can keep away the material miseries of life and at the same time reach the goal of freedom from all material bodies and go back home, back to Godhead. That's the goal. So this analogy is being given here of the body and how this is an explanation of what Narada Muni has said previously in previous chapters regarding how the living entity gets trapped within the material body. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on this, says that, he says, this Panchasura Vidyakrit means enjoying objects sinfully through the five senses. He says this is an explanation of going out hunting. So we understand King Prachinabarhisha, or yeah, King Prachinabarhi. He was a king, but he engaged in a lot of hunting. Like that. So Narada Muni is indicating that in an indirect way that, you know, you're committing sinful activities by killing animals wholesale. And therefore, you're binding yourself more and more to the cycle of both birth and death, like that. So the foolish living entity keeps trying to change their material position or material situation to somehow or other make a better arrangement in this material world. What should we do? Should we not do anything in this material world to improve our situation? Bhagavatam gives the endeavor that the living entity can apply in this world, and that's mentioned in the first canto. One should desire a healthy life. One should desire a healthy life. So therefore, those efforts in order to keep the body and mind healthy in our life is a good foundation for effective execution of devotional service. Of course, we understand through the Shastras that devotional service is not influenced by anything material. But again, the Shastras also indicate that if one is strong in mind and healthy in body, then one can execute devotional service, we say, in a more easy, understandable, and more effective way. So keep good health. That's our endeavor in this world. Otherwise, there's no need to make a big arrangement. If you're destined to be rich, you'll get rich even if you don't work hard. If you're destined not to get rich, if you work hard, you won't get rich anyway. Your destiny is already there. And that's also explained in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Just like happiness, just like misery comes without being asked for, so happiness also comes without any extra endeavor. And the facilities that bring happiness, of course, we can't say, well, what is those things in this world that bring happiness? It's not something inanimate. It's not something that we have. It's something that we are. What brings happiness is your character, your spiritual character, your relationships with other living entities. These are the principles that give happiness, our interaction and relationships with the other living entities based on the principle that we are servant. And we have that idea that we try to serve in any and every capacity we find ourselves in, we develop nice relationships with others. And if everybody is doing that, then the whole world is like Vaikuntha. Of course, everyone wants to be served, therefore that's the material conception. But a devotee thinks, no, actually I want to serve, and because I can have the opportunity to serve, I can have the opportunity to grow in both spiritual life and also in the satisfaction of giving service to others, which is even from the material point of view, is a notable and glorious principle. Now, people are noted for their philanthropic work to others, and they're also glorified in that way. And that people who do that, even if they're not devotees, that gives them pious activities, and that pious activities will bring them to devotional service. Because when pious activities build to a certain, what we say, standard or a certain amount, people become inclined to spiritual life. Many of us, we've accumulated pious activities in previous life, and therefore in this life, automatically when we came in contact with the devotees of the Lord, we were naturally attracted to Krishna consciousness. So therefore, even from that perspective, it's good. But a devotee knows that to serve Krishna and to serve Krishna's devotees is the highest form of service. Material service may have to be done in order to maintain body and soul. And that should be done in the proper consciousness with a desire to please and to do it in as nicest way as possible. But we're not attached to that type of service. We know it's just a necessary part of life. Real service is that service which elevates our consciousness to the spiritual platform. And that's in service in connection with Krishna or within Krishna's devotees like that. Okay, so these are some principles we might be able to think about in terms of what am I doing with my life? How can I improve my life? Improving my life means improving my Krishna consciousness, like that. So we may make some material arrangements to improve our Krishna consciousness, but not material arrangements in order to somehow or other make some more happiness in this world. There's no such thing as material happiness. Material happiness, as it's described in the Shastras, is just one notch above material misery. It's another form of misery because it actually leads one away from our real goal of life, devotion to Krishna. Okay. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for enlightening us. Thank you for such a wonderful instruction through the purport, and thank you for your association regularly. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Now, I will request devotees if they have any questions or they have any realizations to share, please go ahead. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for your association today. Maharaj, I have a question.
Is this Ram Tirtha?
Yes, Maharaj.
How's your voice? Now I can see you. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Maharaj, I was reading Bhagavad Gita 14th chapter, I mean, I was reading 15th chapter, and before that I was looking at 14th chapter also. Last verse of 14th chapter, Krishna says that I am the basis of impersonal Brahman, and which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So I'm confused with that statement, because impersonal Brahman is not the ultimate happiness position, but Krishna is indicating that that is the ultimate position. So how do we understand that statement?
What is Prabhupada's purport? Does he explain it?
Prabhupada purport says that Brahman is the beginning of transcendental realization. And Prabhupada talks about Paramatma, and the highest realization is Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada mentioned about all three types of realization, but from looking at the translation itself, it is little confusing.
Okay, I'm trying to find it. I am the basis of impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So Brahman means pure spirit. It's one of the principles of the absolute truth. Vedanti tat tat vat tityat yat jnanam avyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaneti subjite. So Brahman realization, which is impersonal realization, is the initial principle of spiritual realization, or the lowest form of spiritual realization. Those who attain that, they feel the happiness of the freedom from material suffering or any kind of material existence like that. Basically, the jnanis, they also, what we say, focus themselves on becoming Brahman realized like that. Oops, I lost the verse again. Can you re-put it up again on the thing? Somehow the verse was just, let me see. Okay, I got it again. Here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, now we got it. Let me see if we can go down the page a little bit. Can you bring it up a little higher? Okay. So Prabhupada explains, yeah. So your point is that Brahman, but Prabhupada says one who is in Brahman realization is not perfect realization. One has to continue to rise to the higher levels of realization. But still, it's a feature of realization of the absolute truth, as described in that verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 2nd chapter. Vedanti tad tad vad vidyan yad jnanam avyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti subjite. That this non-dual substance is one, but it appears in three features of itself. So that's also realization, and it is happiness, but it's not complete. The point is that no one can stay in that realization for eternal life. They have to, again, either fall back down to the material tabernacle, or they can rise up from Brahman realization to Paramatma, and ultimately to Bhagavan, like that. So yeah, okay, here we go again. Yeah. So these are the three levels, which are all part of the absolute truth. So Brahman is the lowest, but it's still, Krishna says, I'm the basis of that. But that's not the complete realization of the absolute truth. It's one of the features of realization. It's the goal of the jnanis. The yogis try for Paramatma realization, and the devotees, the Vaishnavas, they go for the complete realization of the absolute truth, which is the supreme personality of Godhead in devotion. So yeah, it's also eternal, but it's not. The feature of Brahman is eternal, but those who achieve Brahman, that level is not eternal. There is that verse, Aruna Krishchena Padam Padam Padantiyada Naduskraya Mahangrayaha, that those who go to Brahman realization, because they do not worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotion, Padanti Ada means they fall down again to the material world to take up philanthropical activities, generally in the mode of goodness or in the mode of passion sometimes. So it's not the position, Brahman is eternal, but the achievement of Brahman is not eternal. So does that help you to answer your question a little?
Yeah, somewhat, Maharaj. The question, the confusing part for me was that yes, Brahman realization is also eternal in one sense, but at the same time, there is a chance of falling down from impersonal Brahman realization.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, Krishna is indicating that is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness, which is, I mean, from our Prabhupada purports and the three levels of realization, Bhagavan realization is the highest, and that is the ultimate happiness, position of happiness. That's our constitutional position. But here the translation is indicating that even the Brahman realization is also ultimate happiness, constitutional position of ultimate happiness. That's what was the confusing part for me. So,
yeah, it says that clearly, constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So, but because it's, when one achieves that, they also feel, but also in the nectar devotion, it says that the happiness from Brahman realization is insignificant in relationship to the happiness that one achieves from the stage of Bhagavan realization. It's insignificant. In fact, it says if you multiply them happiness many times, I can't give you a clear answer. All I can know that Brahman is immortal, imperishable. It brings happiness. But I think what Krishna is saying here is that we are by nature Brahman, which means we are by nature spirit. So when we come to the realization of our spiritual existence, that is the ultimate position of happiness. That's what it seems like to me.
okay, Maharaj. Thank you. Thank you very much.
If you're not sure, keep asking.
No, Maharaj. I think that explains. And also, another point in the same 14th chapter, the one verse before that, there is a statement. It says that Prabhupada is saying that if one is not situated in the same transcendental position with the Lord, one cannot serve the Supreme Lord. To be a personal assistant to a king, one must acquire the qualifications. Thus, the qualification is to become Brahman. So basically, before serving the Supreme Lord, one has to come to the level of Brahman. That's how the purport is indicating. But from sadhana bhakti perspective, the devotees are engaged in the service of the Lord, right from the wherever they are.
Well, equality with Krishna means equality on the qualitative level. One has to be situated in one's constitutional position. That's where the equality is. But no living entity, nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam, eko bahuda vidadati kamam. There is one eternal who is maintaining all the other eternals. So we are eternal, we are many, Krishna is one, he's maintaining us. Eko bahunam vidadati kamam. No one is equal to or no one is greater than him. So we are always subordinate on the quantitative level, but equal on the qualitative level. We have the same constitutional existence or nature as Krishna. So until one achieves that realization, then one is never fully situated in devotional service. One is still aspiring for the perfect platform. It's a progression to get to that stage.
Okay.
Usually it doesn't happen until you leave the body. It's very rare to achieve it in this life, but it's possible also. There are souls who have achieved complete freedom and complete immersion in their relationship with Krishna and devotion. The Goswamis in Vrindavan, they achieved that. Because they could enter into Krishna's pastimes simply by meditating on the Lord in devotion. And they could also see themselves within the pastimes of the Lord. And that's a high stage, but that's also possible. But it's quite rare in this world, especially in this age. But to strive for that means to strive for perfection. So one should never be satisfied with whatever level they have achieved in spiritual life. One should always aspire to increase. Increasing knowledge is important, but increasing bhakti is the way to increase like that. Knowledge is meant to lead to bhakti.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ram. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. I have another question. If nobody has questions, I can ask another, but I'll wait for other people to ask Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All good to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for your wonderful association every Friday. I have a question like you said the verse. What is that verse? Can you say it again? Like the people who go to the impersonal Brahman, they just fall down.
Yeah, it's from the 10th canto. Arunya Krishna Pradam Padam Padatyada and Yusman Anu Ayusman Ahangrayaha. I chanted the verse from the middle. It's spoken by Lord Brahma, actually. I can't remember the beginning of the verse. But if you can look up some of the key words, Aruna, Krishna, Padam Padanti, Ada. It's somewhere in the 10th canto, but I'm not sure where.
Yeah, it's 10.2.32.
Okay. Yeah, let's see. You sure you got 10, that's 1014 you have up, 10.2. Ye nay ravindaksha vimuktimaninas vasasta bhava vasura bhuya aruna krishna padam padam tatanti padam tata padanti adona drikta usmana hangrayaha. Okay, so read the translation and bring it up. Someone can read the translation.
Someone can read. Hare Krishna, can anybody read the translation?
Yeah, someone please say devotees who always seek shelter at the Lord's lotus feet. There are those who are not devotees but who have accepted different processes for attaining salvation. What happens to them? In answer to this question, Lord Brahma and the other demigods said, O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet.
Prabhupada said there are other non-devotees such as karmis, gyanis, and yogis, which include the Mayavadis also. So they're all called non-devotees, although they engage in a type of spiritual practice. Because without serving the Lord in devotion, one cannot remain in whatever position they achieve. Because the whole principle of devotion is to exchange loving relationships with the Lord. Unless one comes to that platform, nothing will satisfy the living entity. Therefore, they have to again fall down. This Prabhupada said, just like if I say, okay, you can have all the money in the world, you can have all the possessions in the world, but you're the only person in the world. So what does that mean? That means you might have everything, but what is happiness is to share loving relationships with others. There's where happiness comes. So because although they climb very high and reach a certain level of realization, you can't stay there because there's no interaction with other living entities. They again fall down. But they can go up from there if they're intelligent and go into the higher stages of bhakti, ultimately reaching uh, rendering devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So achieving a low level of spiritual realization is not a disqualification as long as you continue to move forward. But if you think that's the goal, then that will not stabilize your situation. Again, you fall down again.
Yeah. So Maharaj, how they go to the higher level from impersonal Brahman?
Yeah, they can. We have the example of the four Kumaras. They were Brahmavadis. They were realized in Brahman realization. But as soon as they came in contact with the tulsi leaves and the sandalwood that was smeared on the lotus feet of the Lord, they achieved Bhagavan realization. They went to the higher stages. So yeah, these are called Brahmavatis. Brahmavati means those who Brahman realized. There are two kinds of impersonalists. There are the Brahmavadis and the Mayavadis. The Mayavadis are envious of the Lord, therefore they fall down again. The Brahmavadis are not envious. They just think Brahman realization is the highest achievement. But if they become fortunate and come in contact with something related to the Supreme Lord, they can take that opportunity to go higher. And usually they make great devotees if they go higher because they have already achieved the level of spiritual realization. Ram, you want to speak something?
Yes, Maharaj. Continuation of this discussion, Maharaj, Brahmavadis and Mayavadis. When Prabhupada is talking about impersonalists, in most of these verses, I think Prabhupada is referring to Mayavadis in general. That's why he's asking us to be aware of, be careful with Mayavad philosophy. But impersonalist means impersonalist can be Brahmavadi or Mayavadi, but in general, Prabhupada is speaking about Mayavadis. I think that's how I understand from the purpose. So
Correct.
that is, yeah, that's one thing. Another question, the question I have is, it appears that Brahmavadis do have knowledge of personal aspect of God. They have understanding of personal aspect, impersonal aspect, and Paramatma aspect. So they are aware of all these three aspects of the absolute truth, but they are attached to impersonal Brahman. Is that the right understanding, Maharaj?
Well, they think that the personal feature of the Lord is simply an emanation of the impersonal. They think that the impersonal is higher. They say that when you see form, you're talking in terms of limitation. Therefore, Brahman is unlimited. Therefore, it is the source of everything. And therefore, they say that when Krishna comes to the material world, he takes on a material form. Like that. Or if they chant the holy name, they say that you chant the holy name so you can give up chanting and reach the higher stages of realization. So they use the forms to go beyond the forms. They worship the deity also, but to go beyond the deity. At least they think they can go beyond the deity. So they think that the impersonal is the highest, and the personal is an expansion from or an extension of the impersonal.
Yeah. That's what, yeah. So they do have understanding of the personal, but yeah, they consider impersonal aspect is the highest. That's why, because
if you really want a clear philosophical explanation, read the discussion between Lord Chaitanya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it's in Madhya Lila chapter 7, maybe in that area. And I mean, Bhattacharya is giving all the philosophy of impersonalism. And then finally, after Mahaprabhu listens to everything, he shows how personal is actually higher than impersonal, because personal, just like we use an example, there's the sun and then there's the sunshine. So the impersonal is the energy of the object, and the object itself is different. So the object has energy. So the sun has sunshine as the energy. So the impersonal Brahman is the rays of the Lord's body. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's coming from the Lord's body. But they have it upside down. The reason why is because they don't want to serve the personality of God. Because when you recognize that God is a person and that's the highest, then you have to serve. Otherwise, your whole idea is useless. So they don't want to accept that because they don't want to serve. They want to be, because they say, Om Namo Narayan. They call each other Narayan like that. And they think all living beings are actually God, but in a conditioned state that have somehow fallen into this material world. But they say that's all Leela. When the living entity realizes their godlike nature, they give up this Leela of the material and they actually become the supreme. That's why they call each other Narayan. Because they all think we're all Narayan. But from the highest perspective, you have the principle of Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, which is that the absolute truth is inconceivably, simultaneously one and different. So the oneness is what they emphasize. We emphasize not only the oneness, but the difference also. Simultaneously, there are different schools of thought. Some emphasize the difference, some emphasize the oneness. But Vaishnavas, under the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, emphasize that yes, the absolute truth is both. And you can see that in life too. A person is a person, but they have their energies. Their energies do work according to how they want to use those energies. We all have our energies, but we are the person. So the energy is always subordinate to the source of energy. It's like the light bulb is simply getting its energy from the powerhouse. It's not the source of the light. So impersonal Brahman is simply an expansion of Krishna. That's all.
Yeah. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's some good sections. If you want to read more about it, the discussion between Dr. Sananda Saraswati and Lord Chaitanya and Chaitanya Charitamrita.
So,
that's a nice discussion. Yeah.
Okay, Maharaj.
Prabhupada said, this is the greatest crime on the human society, this impersonalist philosophy. It's destroying everything. And in the Western world, people don't have the philosophical concept, but they have the conception of living according to the impersonal. They think the energy is more important. That's why they pray to the Lord to get the things from the Lord. Having things from the Lord is actually the best part of the worship. So that's a form of impersonalism also.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question concerning a verse that we just saw a few minutes ago, where it says that those who are following other paths, what happens to them. I was just trying to reconcile that verse with the verse from the Gita that says, all paths are mine. So I was just having trouble reconciling these two, that on the one hand, if you follow other paths, then that does not lead to perfection. Yet Krishna says in the Gita that everyone is following his path, or something like that.
Yeah. It's also mentioned in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and that even by following the impersonal path, one can reach the path of auspiciousness. And that's 12.5 in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, verse number 5. But then he says that those who take up the impersonal or the indirect process, although the indirect is also, he says, is very troublesome. Those who are progressing, it's always difficult for those who are embodied like that. And there's always chances of failure, yeah. So yes, all paths are there, but then there's the direct path. The direct path is bhakti. These are more indirect paths, but still, all paths are enunciated by the Lord.
So when he says that all paths are mine, does that mean that although some are more troublesome than others, that all have the potential to result in perfection?
You can, yeah, that's true. Even the material path.
Really?
Because if you want to wait 600 million births, then you'll get there. Prabhupada used the example. You're walking along on the street, and I come along in my car, and I say, would you like a ride? We're going the same place. You say, no, I'd rather walk. And you say, all right, you can walk. It'll take you 6,000 years to get to where you're going. So yeah, after being fully beaten enough by material energy and fully disappointed in how other paths don't lead to the goal, one will finally come to the path of bhakti. But how long that takes, it may take, thousands and thousands of lives.
So it's definitely, the longer way around. But I'm wondering also if it is a guarantee, or could we just remain here eternally?
Well, depends. If you take up spiritual life, you're definitely guaranteed to go back eventually. But that could, if you take up these other paths, you could be, because the problem with the other paths is the rules and regulations for executing these paths successfully are dependent on the expertise to follow them. If you somehow or other miss following in them, you can, cause yourself to be pushed back a couple lifetimes in your endeavor. For bhakti, is a safe path that as long as one is cultivating the proper mood, even if they're not executing the process exactly according to scriptures, they will eventually come to the success in due course of time, very quickly actually. As long as one knows what is the principle of bhakti. The principle of bhakti is to render loving devotional service to the Lord. If you do that, you can do that any moment. You can simply put the Lord in your mind, visualize a beautiful form of the Lord in your mind, and offer your love to Krishna in your mind. That's bhakti. Krishna is going to accept that. You're going to make progress by worshiping the Lord like that. And if we do it in our day-to-day activities, we're also making. But karma yoga, jnana yoga, Astanga yoga, all these different yogas, they have so many parameters that you have to follow in order to achieve progress. And if you make a mistake in the execution, you can fall back down to begin from the lower level.
Yeah, that's
explained in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. So that danger of falling back down is always there. But what I'm wondering is whether it takes a person, a birth, 2 births, or 600 billion births. Is every jiva guaranteed to finally go to the spiritual world? Even if it takes 600 billion births.
Yeah, Prabhupada said everyone will go back home, back to Godhead eventually.
He said that?
Yeah.
Do you remember around where he said that?
Oh yeah, you can find it in his lectures. But again, how many lifetimes you want to wait?
No, me personally, none. I'm just wondering, if it will eventually happen for every soul.
Yeah, give me 1 minute. You want to fill up those jugs? Be careful, that thing is completely full. Okay. Yeah. So you don't mind waiting that long then, huh?
No, I said me personally, I don't want to wait, but I'm just wondering, is it guaranteed for every single soul to eventually go back?
But in one lecture, at least a couple times, says, yeah, everyone will go back to Godhead. But in the meantime, it may, time is eternal. Time doesn't stop. So how long can you actually calculate how long that's going to be?
Mm.
But one who's suffering wants to end their suffering. No intelligent person will take the long way. It's just for the fools who don't really want to get out and want to find ways to try to enjoy material life. It's like some people say, well, when I get sufficiently kicked, when I get fully burnt out, then I'll become Krishna conscious. All right, go ahead. Get burnt out, get kicked, get smashed. And while it's happening, you're not going to like it. So,
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
anything else?
Yeah, I think Mamta Mataji has the question.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for so much nectar. Fridays are our best day now. So, yes. So, Maharaj, when you were speaking, you said that whatever we are getting in this lifetime is the accumulation from our past lives for good or bad. Is that right, Maharaj?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's karma daivana trinam.
Okay.
It's spoken by Prahlad Maharaj. You take birth according to your activities in your previous life.
Mm. So, Maharaj, but then in 6th chapter or 3rd chapter in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that once we are devotees or surrender, then all the karmas get burnt out or are like, are cleared up. So how do we understand, like, sometimes things happen in our lives, and how to understand this, Maharaj? So what is
We
that?
have to realize we're not at the perfectional stage yet. We're being protected by Krishna because we're engaging in devotional service, but still there's some material attachments there. So Krishna is going to allow you to face your material attachments, learn from them, and give them up. Or you can accelerate the process by burning up the results of your material attachments. But in either case, we are in the best position as long as you're engaging in devotional service. We still have tendencies from our previous lives, and even in this life, to still want some material satisfaction, material enjoyment.
Mm.
Well, Krishna say, all right, here. But the thing is, if you really want, if you want to satisfy all your desires, just give up all your desires. Prahlad Maharaj also speaks that. And just, he said, he says, if you want to be happy in this material world, do one thing, stop trying to become happy.
Mm.
So yeah, Krishna will it's called parabdha karma. Some of our attachments, we're still faced with that.
Mm.
And we have a choice whether to act on them and try to continue that desire to enjoy, or to actually give them up.
Yeah. Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, but you're always, as long as you stay in devotional service, you'll always be in the best situation. You get protection from the Krishna, and at the same time, gradually you'll move towards coming to the point of pure devotional service.
Yes, Maharaj.
You just have to be patient.
How to continue with the patience, Maharaj? Sometimes it becomes very difficult.
Association with devotees helps to develop patience. When you're not in association with devotees, then the mind keeps pushing you in a certain way. When you're associated with devotees, then you're engaged in activities, spiritual activity, and you don't think about, well, am I making progress or not? You're happy.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Okay, maybe we can stop here. And we thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. And hopefully something was communicated. So we'll see you all again in 1 week's time.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you so much for your valuable association on every Fridays. Thank you, Maharaj. So we can offer obeisances. Vancham kalptarubhishya kripa sindhuryavicha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha anant koti vaishnavandiki jai Srila Prabhupada jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj ki jai. So thank you everyone for joining. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Hare Krishna.